Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
Sometimes a girl just needs to forget her problems. Help me forget.
Beth Marks? Sorry about your father.
Who are you?
Isaiah Slade. I saw on the news how your sister Sloane is still missing, and I want to help find her.
What are you, a cop?
Used to be.
I had an accident. These huge chunks of time just disappear from my memory. I didn't know where I lived. Didn't know who I was.
You don't trust me? I do. Just not with my life.
Well, you like hanging out so much, you wouldn't mind coming back down to the station, would you?
We've got us a coyote in here.
Should I get out the rifle?
Everything's on a knife's edge.
How well do you know Sloane?
I was here when she was born. I taught her how to ride.
Do you think I have any loyalties to her after what I know?
Don't press me.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 472. Available now on video on demand and digital is Find Her, a murder mystery that tells the story of an ex-cop who arrives in a small town searching for answers to a murdered ranch owner and his missing daughter. An engrossing noir, rich in atmosphere and featuring a twist-filled story, Find Her is written, directed, and stars Nick McCallum, who I'm glad to say joins me now on the podcast. Nick, so glad to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really want to start off the conversation talking about the idea of making a noir. I know you're very fond of the genre as a whole. You talked about how films like Chinatown, Angel Heart, movies like that, more the modern day kind of noirs, have been really kind of like influential to you as a filmmaker. When it comes to making one day, the decision to go ahead and doing it, was it always kind of like an aspiration of yours to kind of like put your own stamp on the genre and make your own noir? Or does that kind of stuff come across more organic? You get your story first and then the style kind of comes into the equation later?
I think probably the latter, the organic nature of indie filmmaking in general, where you have interest from an investor and you have these locations, and I'm just such a fan of the genre that it slowly, as I was creating the story, almost in knowing the location first, that kind of girl missing detective nature of it kind of stood out first, and from there, you sort of, as the story's going, you're like, this is a noir, this is a detective story. I had been binging everything from the True Detective series to a lot of the British, Midsummer Murders and Poirot had been on in the background, that BBC type of show. And of course, Chinatown's one of those movies that, I can watch at any time. It's kind of like a background movie for me. So I think,
speaking of background, I got it on my poster in my wall just in my office now, actually.
I was going to say, I have one right over here off to the side. But yeah, it's one of those things where, getting into the organic or the subconscious nature of writing, even the aspects that you'll see and Find Her, where you kind of the way Chinatown has water, that there's a smaller story that's affecting Jake in that film at the end of it all. And I kind of created that with Warner. If you think back on the nature of how this Garrett Warner character is collecting land in the small town, the different tree farms, taking over the Marks Ranch, whether he ends up being the ultimate, villain or just an extra villain, that kind of stuff is left to hopefully be a surprise.
I really like to ask as well in regards to noirs in indie filmmaking versus kind of like your studios, because back in the day, like when I say the day, I mean this is before our time as well, but the noir was the staple of kind of like Hollywood filmmaking. Like in a lot of the film, like a lot of filmmakers like John Huston, etc., and so many others, like they made their bones out of making these films. But now it seems like noir has become more the territory of indie filmmakers, because from what I remember just top of my head, whenever I come across a noir project, is usually I am talking to indie filmmakers about them. Why do you think it is about that genre that kind of number one has gotten out of favor with studio filmmakers, and number two has really opened itself up to more kind of like the indie road with filmmakers kind of like yourself?
Well, I can't really speak to with studio films. Everything's kind of a cycle. I feel like you have the comic book. Your Marvels and your DCs are almost a replacement of. Oh, there you are. Almost a replacement of the way the Western took over in the John Wayne days, or like you say, the noir was kind of, you get Bogart, Maltese Falcon, John Huston. All of that was obviously that's post. Prohibition, and you're getting, that's the mafias are coming up, and that seedy underbelly is there. But I've talked about this before, where noir almost kind of, it allows you in a as an indie filmmaker, it allows you to have a setting that doesn't have to be bothered with too much. You don't have to do a lot of set dress to create the world, and the nature of the world itself gets to kind of be something new for an audience, like it almost like the way a horror film, the horror film, you start a movie and it takes you on a journey, and you can kind of lose yourself. And I feel like even though it is more embedded into our society today, and you can keep it real, it still allows you to kind of be in that setting, like along with those BBC shows. Like my dad, he just loves the NCISs and all those network shows that you kind of get a clean beginning, middle, and end. I'm going to get this story and something's going to be solved. I think there's an aspect of that people like as well, but I guess that doesn't really speak to the indie the film side. But yeah, I think it allows you to tell a story that can be interesting and involve the audience, but not have the need for a high budget, would be a good answer.
You made mention before about location, and this film was shot in forgive me if I get a pronunciation wrong, but Basile, Louisiana.
Basile, yeah.
Basile,
Yeah,
Louisiana.
locals would say.
And some Florida as well, but mostly like it was an 18-day shoot, Basile, Louisiana. How much does, I think you did make a slight mention before, how much, and I'll just get into it deeper, how much does location determine story, character, look, of course, is a big part of it as well, because I'd imagine, that little, what you spoke before in regards to the Garrett Warner character and the way he does his business handlings, the different industrial kind of like things that happen within Basile would make some type of determination as to what type of businessman you're dealing with, right? So how does that all kind of affect the way that you kind of approach your film in regards to look, cinematography, costume design, etc.? Because that's such a big, it's part of every film, but noirs especially, that visual component is such a big, huge kind of ingredient getting those films made.
Yeah, absolutely. The being out in that area, the setting itself, it's much further northeast or northwest than like your first season of True Detective, for instance. But the nature of, you can go to a property, and if something were to happen to you with the swamps, and it's not necessarily considered swampland there, but right away, if you want to have a paranoia about your settings as a visitor, it'd be easy to disappear, with that. So even as an indie filmmaker and going, I knew the property. I was an actor in a movie that had shot at that original camp where Warner's property was years before. So I was aware of that, and I was aware of a couple of the really nice locations, the abandoned barn and things like that, where that was kind of in the first script. But even like where he goes and meets Alvarez, there's sort of a Hitchcock North by Northwest nod. I don't know if it even came across to a viewer like yourself, but where this guy is going to meet someone in a private area. And originally in the script, I didn't have a spot yet. So when I went and scouted a couple months before, I'm driving, and then there's those water towers, and it's amazing how there's nothing around them for what seems miles. So just as an indie filmmaker, you try to be aware of that and just kind of like, that's the scene we could use that for. And then all of a sudden, you're writing extra things to kind of adapt and take advantage of that isolation. And it's like, that's kind of like Cary Grant waiting for the bus, and that, or I guess he wasn't waiting for the bus, but we just didn't have the crop duster. We didn't have that wasn't in the budget. But yeah, I think that if that answers your question, there's that, and for the visual itself, it's kind of an homage where we have Slade wearing the trench coat throughout.
Yes.
Like it might not be the most, easy way to blend in, but maybe he doesn't want to blend in, so that's kind of your Bogart, Robert Mitchum, out of the past, kind of just kind of a wink of like, hey, we're trying to get some nice dedication to the past noir films.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon. The world's leading online store, Amazon is your first stop to buy a wide range of products at competitive prices with fast delivery times. Amazon is also a world-class entertainment hub that includes Prime Video, Audible, Twitch, Amazon Music, and more. Sign up with Amazon today and experience the best in online shopping and entertainment. Please support Matt's Movie Reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. When I talked to filmmakers previously, especially indie filmmakers, about shooting in small towns, they often talk to me about how open and welcoming the citizens of those towns are. They like to chip in. They like to say, things as benign as, hey, if you guys want to have lunch here or something, we can help you guys out, or what have you. And I'd imagine that camaraderie would have been the same in Brazil as well, because not only do you have the scenery there, but there's multiple scenes where there's police cars and all sorts of stuff, and I'm sure that's a resource that you yourself as a producer would have been like, oh, this is fantastic. I can they're more than welcome to help, and I'm more than and I need the help, and I can add some more atmosphere to this. What was it like working with the people there? I mean, 18 days is a small amount of time, but for a film that's so hectic and has such heavy investment in it, those 18 days would have felt like a lifetime, and you made some really good connections and friends during that time.
Oh, I can't even tell you. Yeah, all of the above. I lived in Los Angeles just as an actor for 20 years, and in Los Angeles, they'll treat areas like Acton and some of the rural spots north of there where or Vasquez Rocks, I guess, where it's those sideways rocks where they used to shoot Star Trek by there and all that. And you'll go to like a mini mart that feels, full on in the middle of nowhere. And that person knows, oh yeah, you're going to make a movie here. That's going to cost you this amount of money. This is what, they like, even the most rural setting, they're completely aware of the Los Angeles prices where their business, it's a business. So just as a filmmaker down there, I was able to go to the Eunice is one of the close towns, kind of the closest town where they have a police department. And I was able to just have a meeting with the chief of police there and describe what I was doing and, letting them know that, the police force isn't going to come across as, yokels or anything where they're bumbling things. I had full respect for that. And he assigned me a point woman, and she ended up being in Karina. She ended up being in the film as well. She was kind of one of the side officers, and I was able to just text her whenever we needed a police car, which, as any indie filmmaker hearing that is like, you can, here's the day we decide we need a police car, come on down, like that kind of generosity was amazing. And then obviously that scene that's even in the trailer with Slade getting dropped off and the whole team going to a murder scene.
Yeah.
If you were in the Los Angeles area, you're paying stunt people, you have to pay for the cars, you have to, lock off the roads. And so we were very fortunate, just to get so many people excited to be part of a film. And hopefully we'll get to go back out there, and make another one soon.
It's been, I think, 8-9 years since your last film that you directed, Past God. And from what I've read about the experience of making that film, that was like you were going from credit card to credit card on that movie. I mean, you were really just maxing out any type of any type of finances you had to try to get that made. When you look back on the experience with that movie, and then as compared to your time on Find Her, what do you take from that first film into this next one? I mean, I'm sure there are so many lessons to be learned from diving into a deep end with a movie, and then when you come into a second one, you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that again, but that was a good idea. Maybe I'm looking into that a little further.
That absolutely. The starting out just as an actor, I would I began writing short scripts to kind of just facilitate roles for myself. And then eventually, realizing like, oh, I'm liking seeing what the director's doing. I'm working with the director. I think I can do this. And, so it was a slow process to have that confidence. So yeah, Past God, it definitely, I think we shot it over 11 months, to where you're getting a thing where like, oh, this actor's free, or, the DP can work on, this month. We had a documentary camera with, no lens rentals. It was a Sony EX3 and just, DP pulling his own focus, lighting his own thing, Zach Voitis was his name. And it was invaluable having not gone to film school, because by doing, there was just such a trial and error of things where you'd shoot something wanting to be very artistic, like, okay, this is going to be a one shot and we're going to slowly move in and then, you get in the edit room and you're like we don't have the credibility in the storytelling to have people wait for this long shot. You're trying to do a Orson Welles kind of thing. And so, those type of stories are again, yeah, you're putting it into the next work. I'm proud of that movie. I think even my DP Zach would agree that it's hard to watch. The storytelling's great. I'm all about the storytelling, but it's hard to watch, when you're having to be compromised on shooting it on a documentary camera when, that should have been full lenses and gear. And so, yeah, you have to make those compromises.
In those 8-9 years, not a big difference from then to now is the rise of kind of like streaming and digital and that kind of like capacity to get your films out there to different people and different platforms as well. I always I'm always reminded that it's one thing to make a film, it's another thing to get the film out there for people to watch it. In the indie filmmaking world, where you as a filmmaker have aspirations to create a shot that's reminiscent of those Orson Welles and such. You're reminded that back then the only way that people could see those movies were in the biggest theater as possible. These days people can watch it on their computer, on their little devices, wherever else. Are you cognizant of that when you're making your movies, that people can watch your movies in any kind of capacity, in any place, on any type of screen? Or do you just have to keep in mind with the vision that's up here as opposed to the vision other people might have watching your films when it does eventually release?
Yeah, I feel like our TVs, like I definitely am just grateful to have eyeballs watching the project, so I don't necessarily think like, oh, this is going to be on the big screen that people are seeing this. It's much more of just taking in the story, and yeah, obviously people are popping movies on their iPhones now. So yeah, I don't think that's as much of a thought. I think, to your point on it can be watched anywhere now. It's not necessarily, especially during the pandemic, it's not appointment viewing. I'm going to go to the theater mostly for projects. My writing has been, for future scripts, is very aware of the idea that if you don't grab them in the first couple minutes, especially if you don't have George Clooney as your lead, or it makes the storytelling much more expedient, where you're thinking, okay, we got to get to the point, we got to capture the ADD attention. There was I don't remember the name of it, but that there's the normal screenwriter structure of the 3 acts, and I recently was reading a book talking about pretty much making a beginning, middle, and end of your movie in 5 acts. So if you have a 100-minute movie, finding a way to link 5 20-minute stories of your character, trying to find those payoffs, and I do find that in some of these good movies where I just watched. Have you seen Barbarian yet?
I haven't. That is on the list. I'm going to watch it this week because it just hit VOD last week, I think. So I'm going to finally watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, that just came to mind. Where I was watching that. That kind of format where you're like, okay, I'm totally into this. 10 minutes in, where is this thing going? And keeping people on their toes, and I think that as an indie filmmaker, that's very important. Like that Past God you referenced. I'm doing my best. Truffaut meets. I don't even know what it was at the time. Where attention spans. Unless you're into that kind of movie, it's too slow. For modern audiences in my current state.
Yeah, well, I got to say, I really did enjoy Find Her, because I like to watch a good noir, and to watch a new one is a pleasure. And I think I really love the casting that you have. I love the story, the twists I didn't see coming, which I really appreciate. And I've got to say, having watching so many movies during the week, it's nice to see something that catches you off guard. And for everyone out there listening, Find Her available on video on demand in digital platforms. I really recommend people check this film out. I know it's spooky season. I know it's Halloween season, but if you do want to watch a really good kind of gripping, kind of like a murder mystery, I really recommend checking Find Her out. Find Her, and yeah, get people talking about this film, because I know it's been out since early October. Seeing little reviews here and there. I'm going to have my review up very soon as well, and have this podcast up today. And yeah, hopefully I get to see more from you, Nick, behind the camera, man, because I really enjoyed what you've done with Find Her. Really great work.
Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate that, and yeah, that the film was able to get to you like that. That's really great.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.